For those of you who are joining us for Ignite Your Soul Connection, Summer Solstice Edition, the Healing Waters for Men, we are going to get started momentarily. We're going to let our room of people, or those of you who actually got tickets, we want to give you a chance to come in and join us and sit down and prepare for a wonderful conversation. So let's give it a few minutes. Just for those of you that don't know me, I'm Mushim Soot. I will be your facilitator, and I will be your facilitator throughout this week. Tonight we're talking about Beyond the Parent Trap. And then tomorrow we will be talking about empowering emotions. On Wednesday, we will be speaking about grounding yourself spiritually. And then on Thursday, we'll be speaking about health, sex, yes, sex, and well being. And then on Friday, we will have a full panel discussion all about powerful relationships. You will get a full panel of 6 or 7 of us sharing our insights, concerns, ideas, remedies, all of that. So we're hoping that you can join us for this full week. Let's let people come on in. And in just a minute or two, I'm going to actually invite us to go into our breath so we can synchronize our energy together. We'll have an opportunity to be still, right? To actually be still together and ground ourselves in the space. So if you could just go ahead and begin to make sure you can do that just in another minute at the 3-3 mark. Just want to give more people a chance to come in. And we are recording this. So if you have questions, please put those in the chat. And our producer, the wonderful Vicky Pulliam, will send them to me and we will answer your questions as best we can. Right? Okay, so now if you're driving, right, or lifting any heavy machinery, please do not participate in this part of the conversation. We're just going to do a short breathing exercise, and we're going to do this each day just so we can be still and pull away from life, right? Pull back from all of the things going on. So if you can just sit still, and if you can sit erect so that your diaphragm is lifted, so that your chest is not sitting on your stomach. And I want you to exhale all of the air from your body, from your stomach. And we're going to breathe in and out through our nose. So breathe in and breathe deep into your belly. Breathing in and hold it. 2, 3, 4. And exhale through your nose. And allow any tension to release, just like that. Let it go. Release, relax your shoulders, and hold. 2, 3, 4. Breathe in. Exhale through your nose. Releasing, releasing, releasing. Letting go. Letting go. You're going to hold it. 2, 3, 4. Breathe in. Deeper. And hold. 2, 3, 4. And exhale. Slowly releasing. Letting go. Pushing in. Very good. Breathe in one more time. And hold. 2, 3, 4. Now exhale, and as you exhale, I want you to scan your body and just see if there's any tension any place and just let it go. Just release it. Just keep breathing normally. And as we're doing this process, as we're speaking tonight, as we're talking tonight, really stay in your breath. This topic can trigger some things in you. And the best way to allow yourself to expand through the conversation is to use your breath, right? Don't allow the anxiety or tension, don't allow any of that to settle with you. You can always ask a question. You can always journal, write down what there is, and release it. We're not fixing anything here tonight. We're sharing, we're observing, we're looking, we're checking in. We're looking to see what is beyond the parent trap. What is beyond the parent trap? And now, before I start talking too much, let us bring in the most amazing friend, confidant, astrologer, intuitive, life coach, minister. Hey, Timothy.
I'm like, who the hell is she talking about?
Right.
And I'm like, okay, oh, it's me. Okay.
That would be you, sir.
Yeah, so here I am. Welcome everyone to this awesome event. I am so grateful just to be here. First, giving honor to divine spirit and the ancestors for their guidance, their energy, and their wisdom that will be working through us tonight. And, I'm just so excited to be here. I want to thank Master Force. Thank y'all so much
Yes.
for hosting this event and to think of men in this season of the solstice. I'm so honored to even be a part of that conversation. You may have made a mistake making me go first because I'm going to be all over the place. But nevertheless, I think we're fine. We'll find our way. I also want to recognize my wife, the other half of my work,
Yes.
Jaquay Glenn. Shall I just introduce myself, or do you just?
Now I want you to introduce yourself, and I want the people. I know that they won't get to know you at the level that I do, but
Mhm.
what I want you to introduce yourself in a way that they can get why I trust you
Okay.
inside of this information.
Okay. Okay. Very,
Yes.
very good. So, again, giving honor to the ancestors for their wisdom and guidance and energy. I'm a spiritual mentor, and I am a disciple of the mystic path. I have been on this path for over 30 years now. Actually, all this began for me at the age of 9, and I'm going to kind of walk you through a timeline about how I got here. But a little bit about me. I am a licensed and ordained minister. The path has taken me away from the four walls of limitation within the church building and pulpit and created another pulpit that is a stage among the world now. So people of all religions I can relate to, people of no religion I can relate to.
Mhm.
Why? Because there is wisdom in life. And if you are living, there's a wisdom, there's a story behind to be told with that. So again, I've been doing this for a minute. I am the co-founder. I mentioned my wife. She assisted me in co-founding Light back in the year of 2000. Okay, so we'll be approaching our 20th anniversary this year in marriage and in the work. Okay, well, actually 19 with the marriage, but actually it's 19. I think we started in 2001, so 19 on both of those. Remember, when I got married, the day after we started Light. For you who don't know what Light is, it is Leadership Institute for Transformation and Empowerment. It is an institution committed to developing leaders, dealing with painful trauma, dealing with deep emotional issues, dealing with the ascension of the soul's process of ascension above the ego. And we've been doing this forever, seems like. So uh, I'm hoping that kind of qualifies me to speak on what we're doing tonight. As you mentioned, it's kind of hard for me to recognize myself as an astrologer, I guess, but I'm willing to take that role to,
Please do.
when I need to. But
Yes.
actually, astrology is a tool that we use to get a deeper conversation from my client or the student that's in front of me. There are so many things they have forgotten about themselves. So with the astrology, I'm reminding people of their sacred contract, of why they came, and even the parents they chose, which will be um, in the discussion tonight. So again, that's who I am. I am also known as the Awakened Magi, and the Awakened Magi is where we use all of our tools of wisdom that come from astrology and other um, modalities as well to give insight to people who may be searching, who may be seeking what exactly is the path of the mystic. And the path of the mystic is simply this: it's the ability to see God, Him, her, it, in all of its glory and manifestation, in the beauty of a rose garden, in the tragedy of a 12-car pileup with multiple deaths. God is in the conversation of everything we experience. And the path of the mystic is to integrate the so-called good and the bad, and integrate that into a meaningful experience that elevates us on a spiritual level. Okay, so I'll leave it there at that.
That's wonderful. No,
Yeah.
it's wonderful because one of the conversations that I'm really starting to have with people is that it's necessary for us to um, take our power back.
Hmm.
We've given so much of who we are, we've placed that authority outside of ourselves that we
Hmm.
forgot that we're sovereign. You
Yes.
know, we forgot that we're mystics. All of us are on a path to
Hmm.
seek that light, to seek God inside of ourselves and inside of all of life. And we're
Hmm.
not here to be traumatized and stay there.
Right. Absolutely. Very true. Very true.
Hmm.
So, I'm just going to go into this conversation, and if I'm going too fast, you just kind of pull my coattail and just say
Okay.
slow down, and let's. But so again, I mentioned my path started at 9 years old, and my teacher, the greatest teacher that I've ever known, was actually my grandfather. So let me give you the story of my grandfather. My grandfather was a very high esteemed Freemason. Okay. And by the time I was able to spend most of my time with him, he had already um, retired from his job. He's an Army vet, so he was very disciplined. Okay, but yet very nurturing. And he didn't know that he took me on as his student, but I became his student because from sun up to sundown, we lived in the country, and a lot of our work was centered around farming and in the gardens, and in those gardens, he began to teach me very, very valuable lessons of how thoughts work, how thoughts are planted. At 9 years old, I'm getting all of this, right? And of course, I didn't necessarily like it because all the other kids were playing ball and all the other good stuff, and I'm in the fields with him. But I grew to love that, and my classroom, it didn't involve a chalkboard or a podium. Uh, my classroom was the observation of his example of righteousness, his example of excellence, his example of being in touch with nature and in touch with God as one with nature. And I began to, just observe him in all of that. And there's so many things I've witnessed from him. Okay. I can remember watching, I believe at around 6 or 7 years old, my first solar eclipse. I saw it with him. It was that's back in either late 70s, early 80s. We had a solar eclipse that was crazy. And back then, you know, they really didn't want you to look directly
No,
at the sun.
no,
So
exactly.
we had to create this concoction from a box,
Yes.
right? And angle that box at a specific time of the eclipse. Somehow he knew the exact time it was going down. And we were out there waiting on it. And sure enough, I could see the sun in that box.
Wow.
Okay. and I'm seeing it turn into that crescent, into the ring of fire, and back into the crescent. And he began to explain to me, he said, one day you'll know the mysteries of all of this.
Mm.
This is a man that, when we're out in the evening hours and he looks up at the moon and there's a ring around the moon. You may have seen that yourself.
Yes.
Well, when there's a ring around the moon, that lets us know that there is going to be a shift in weather.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But he also let me know that there could also be a shift in your emotional states. You may feel angry. So he would talk to me about emotions when we looked at this ring around the moon. So I'm getting these lessons, right? All at 9 years old. And there are some things I saw in him that, and I'm going somewhere with this. So, so again, just bear with me. There's some things that I saw in him that I carried with me for the rest of my days. Like there is a lot of conversation about injustice and police brutality in this time. I can remember at around 8 years old, there was my mom worked a lot. Okay. So I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, as many children did. So I'm with my grandparents. I think actually my mom was out partying because this was on the weekend. I think so. My mom was out hanging out. So I'm with
Right.
my grandparents around 1, 2 in the morning. There's a loud banging on the door. And back in those days, they kept a shotgun at the door. So you didn't look, if you come banging at our door with my grandparents, grandmother especially, you're going to be met with a shotgun. Okay. And they kept the doors unlocked. But
Mm-hmm.
yet there's a shotgun at the door because there was just a mutual respect that we would take care of each other. Okay. So somebody's banging at the door and they're like, my cousin, William, they say, William is about to be arrested. There's a cop that has followed him for miles and followed him to his house. We need your help. And I'm like, well, my grandfather's not a police officer. What is about to happen? In 5 minutes, we were all clothed in the old pickup truck, you know how granddaddies do. So we're in the pickup truck driving down the street, just hauling ass, right? Gravel everywhere. It were gravel roads. It wasn't anything paved. This is the country. So we're sliding all over the place, getting to that event. He hops out the car. He said, there better be a damn good reason why you stopped my relative. I remember that. I'm like, oh, what is, because I was always afraid of the police, man, for real, as a kid. But I'm sitting here watching this, and I don't remember what happened because they pulled me back. It was just him. I saw my grandfather pointing in his face. And the last thing I heard him tell my cousin William, he said, whatever ticket he gave you, you rip it up. He's going to be on his way. And that's pretty much what happened.
Wow.
I never forgot. So to this day, if I ever have a confrontation with a police officer, I never, I'm always respectful, but I let them know that I'm not the one that is going to be a statistic. You're
Mm.
going to know that you're dealing with the power of God if you confront me in an unjust way. So I learned that with him. Now, again, the whole talk is about the parent trap. So at 9 years old, again, I told you this is where my initiation began. My mother married my stepfather at 9 years old. So I was taken away from my grandfather, my space of comfort and nurturing, into a home that was very, very physical in an abuse, just physically abusive, emotionally disconnected. And I was pretty much on my own most of the life as a child and my teenage years. So I guess we can go into the parent trap from there if there's anything you want to add, or I can just,
Well,
keep on
no,
going
but
with that.
that's well. What I do want to add is points of reference for our listeners
Mm-hmm.
inside of what you're saying, and
Mm-hmm.
most of us have heard this, but our formative years are from birth to the age of 7. So you can
Mm-hmm.
see that there were things that you were grounded in with your
Mm-hmm.
grandparents that gave you a sense of yourself,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then at the age of, I believe, 7, the reticular activating system of
Hmm.
the system in your brain that allows you to distinguish between right and wrong. Because up until that age of 7, you're just copycat. Whatever somebody do, you do, right?
Yes.
You don't question. You don't know what. I'm just doing this because I was told to do it. But at 7, you start to distinguish for yourself. Oh, that's wrong,
Hmm.
or that's
Yes.
right, whatever that is.
Yes.
So now, when you go into your relationship with your stepfather,
Hmm.
you have a sense of self, right?
Hmm.
So
Yes.
you can sustain yourself, but you're
Hmm.
also questioning what's really going on.
So true. So true. And, I told you, even with astrology, there are certain houses from Aries on, pretty much to the sign of Cancer that shows us the developmental stages of
Mm,
one's consciousness and awareness growing up as children. And depending on what planets are there, okay, you can see the amount of wounding. And I'm about to go into a segment of my work that I want to call parental wounding.
okay.
And it is important, again, to acknowledge that we chose our parents, even the authority figures that come into our space. The amount of education I received up to the age of 9 was enough to sustain me through some very traumatic events. Um, Physical abuse from the stepfather, emotional disconnection from my mother, and even sexual abuse from other relatives
Wow.
within the community that I thought were here to protect me.
Mm,
So there may be some men on here. I don't want you, if you feel that you're being triggered, if you feel that this is becoming a lot for you, I need for you to breathe with me. Do not leave this session because I need for you to know that there are more of us than you could ever realize that have been through very traumatic events. The idea is not to become enslaved or entrapped within those experiences to the point that we pass those things down to our babies, leaving them to do our ancestral work.
mhm.
Okay. So,
So,
it,
I want you to
mhm,
break that up just a little bit because that's great. I want you to
mhm,
break up just a little bit what you mean by ancestral work, just a little
sure,
bit. Mhm.
absolutely. If so, every generation has their work to do. Every time someone is born, even going back to the astrology, I was telling somebody this earlier. Here, when a baby is born, we can't wait to get that baby Christian or baptized. In our Eastern culture, there was an astrologer on the scene at the time of birth. Why? Because whatever wisdom came from that astrologer, that's what we named the child, because this would remind the child of what they are to experience. So everybody has their own ancestral contracts to work through and clean up. Now, this generation, there is a lot of grace upon us because and there's a lot of work for us to do because our ancestors, you go back uh, many centuries, okay, over 400 years of trauma, and our ancestors didn't have the opportunity to have a life coach, a therapist, a trauma therapist,
Mhm.
somebody that can work us through the emotional distress of seeing a husband sold from the family, seeing a child ripped away from the clutches of its mother, seeing a husband seeing his wife sexually abused in his face or his children. We didn't have life coaches to deal with that.
Right.
Okay. It's something to think about. So now it is upon us not to just do our work, but to catch up with this ancestral energy. And we're not doing this alone. They are with us. We're created in this time for a specific purpose. It's not like God was just rolling the dice and we just happened to end up here. You chose to come here at this specific time to your specific um, pieces of authority, whether it's your parents, could be your uncles, could be your teachers, pastors, and so forth. But again, that's what I mean by these ancestral legacies that have been carried down. We are in the process now of healing all of the dirt and damage that the United States and the country altogether in the world, if you think about it, has ignored up to this point. We may not all disagree on the strategy, but we can all bear witness and acknowledge that it is time to look at the pain for what it is and look at what it has done for us so that we can finally balance this energy and karma so that we don't pass it down to our sons and daughters only to repeat a sequence of trauma onto their children. Okay. At some point, we got to put the brakes on this. We have to annihilate the curse of perceiving ourselves as inferior
Yeah.
and as a victim,
Yeah.
because it's easy to assume that position if you don't know who you are. And I'm hoping tonight that I can just give a hint of who we are in this time, especially for men, since that is the subject here. Because again, there are a lot of men who would rather not deal with such a sensitive issue, and they don't even know that they are still in the trap of the parents they have refused to forgive and let go of.
Hmm.
So again, maybe we can, just tell me how you want to go with that.
I love that. No, that's perfect because when we're saying parent trap, let
Hmm.
us give them what that trap is,
Hmm.
before we can move beyond it. So yes, let's go in there. What's the
Okay, so let's think about what a trap is.
trap?
Again, I'm from the farm, I'm from the country, so I've seen my share of traps. And if there's an animal that and for God's sake, we're not animals, but I'm using this as an example.
Yes.
If there's an animal that we really want to trap, we must first put them in a state of hypnosis, if you will, meaning that there has to be something in the trap, some type of food, some type of smell, something that causes you to lose your awareness that there is a structure around this thing you're being pulled into. And you forget all about that. And the only thing that you can think of are the triggers that are pulling you towards this subject that you are desiring. Okay. Keep in mind, we're not logically analyzing what is happening because the very entrance of that trap is we assume that it's also the exit.
Mm.
We assume that it's easy to get in, it will be easy to get out, but we find that once the animal is in the trap, then there's a trigger that encloses what it couldn't see before. And then the focus of our desire is no longer on what we thought we wanted, but now, how can I get free? Now we go into full panic mode because the walls are now closing in, and we're looking at freedom with a barrier or some type of degree of separation there, and the animal becomes literally disconnected from itself.
Mm.
Okay,
Mm.
so with that being said, and there are certain people who set traps for animals for their own protection. And it's kind of how I want to deal with this. If there's an animal that is in danger, if they're living in a place where there are a lot of hunters, some people will trap that animal in order to save that animal. Especially if it's going extinct, they'll take that animal and put it in an environment that is conducive for its longevity. Okay, and I think that's how the soul works. Okay, now I talked a little bit about parental wounding. I need for everybody to understand this, whether you're male or female. It is your parents' job to wound you. In astrology, there are two houses that I look at for this wounding. There's the fourth house, which shows me how one must transcend the wounding of the mother, and then the 10th house of how one must transcend the wounding of the father. It is their job to wound you. And some of you may have thought that you had the best parents in the world because they provided for you everything you could possibly need. But yet, on an emotional level, you find yourself on the hamster wheel of relationships, attracting certain type of people into your space. This is part of the trap. And the thing about it is, when we're wounded by our parents, we unconsciously fall into this trap, and then we unconsciously expect those same parents to save us
Mm.
from the trap. So we're sitting here, many of us are still in the cage today, waiting on mom, waiting on dad to own what they did to you so that you can finally be free. And that day may never come. Some people, your parents may not even be alive in this dimension to assist you with that. This means that something higher than your pain must evolve, must ascend in order to save yourself from the trap that you fell into. Okay, so I'll just stop right there and let you speak on that.
That's powerful. I mean, I don't think I ever heard that before. Maybe you said that before and I didn't let it register. But it's the parent's job to wound you. And I can really, really see that
Mm-hmm.
inside of the conversation of, in order for a child to be separated from the parent as a powerful adult,
Yes.
they have to know that the parent themselves, like, it stops here. Like, I am my individual soul doing my work too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to make sure that you're going to be, now I can provide and make you safe and that, but
Yes.
there's work that you have to do outside of me. So
Yes.
you have to, like, cut the, you see the bird, you see the mother kick the bird out,
Yeah.
the baby bird out all the time,
Yes.
and she looking at him. Is he gonna make it? He
Yes.
gotta flap them wings because I can't save him, you know.
Yes.
and eventually he gets closer to the ground and start flap, furiously, right? So
Yes.
that is powerful. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh, Again, when we're choosing our parents, we're not choosing them for from a place in time, because in time, the only thing we really want is to enjoy life
Yeah.
and be comfortable.
Yes.
We really don't want any uh, pain or confrontation in life. We just want peace, and we just want to go along to get along. But when we choose our parents, trust me when I tell you, I can just even doing astrology, one thing I'm sure of is that we don't just choose parents that make us comfortable. We choose parents that increases our ability to align with our potential. And that means there has to be some dark elements transferred to the children. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at a child that is not being fed, getting the crap beat out of them, to know that we have a problem here that needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
But what about the mother who gives the son everything that he wants?
Mm.
He never has to work for anything. Even when he has crossed boundaries in his life, the mother runs to rescue him from the karma or the energy that he's accumulated from his own experience. So she becomes his savior.
Mhm.
Now, usually men, no matter if you were close or not to your mom or whatever, we still tend to gravitate towards the mother for men, and women towards their fathers. Hence the word daddy's girl, mama's boy. These are cliches, but these have relevance. And they're very relevant to the conversation we're having tonight. So with the mother, again, my PhD, is in psychology. When I was in seminary, I probably should have thrown that out, but hell, we'll get to it whenever it's needed. But in that, I began to study a lot of Carl Jung's work. Carl Jung is a valuable inspiration to me, and one I also consider an ancestor. I don't just that I have many ancestors of all ethnicities. It's kind of hard to explain, because it's not about the skin I'm promoting, it's about the healing,
Mhm.
right? So I began to embody that work. And, you know, there are mothers who really condition their sons to believe that the world, is here to serve them. And they have no rights to be in a place of having to work for anything, that you deserve all these good things that come to you. You don't have to invest in yourself. You don't have to do this inner work and healing. Just find you a mate that will take care of you. So many of their wives become mothers because of those irresponsible expectations that were planted by the mom. And she was the best mom in the world to him. Why? Because she gave him a place of comfort that he didn't have to do the work of initiation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we'll talk more about initiation as we go on, but I did work with a lot of men and women who either um, did everything they could, well, mothers who did everything they could for their sons, or mothers who are actually emotionally disconnected, caused the men to begin to self-soothe or to soothe themselves unconsciously. Sometimes that could come off as multiple uh, uh, multiple events of masturbation. The masturbation, that use of sex, gives them the ability to feel like they're in control of their life. And it takes care of the needs they actually wanted from their mother to nurture them. It takes that away, and they begin to embody that responsibility of what they didn't get as a child. I hope that's not too complex. I don't want to go too far
No,
down the rabbit hole.
keep going. That's yes, keep going. Yes.
So there are a lot of men who can't connect sexually to their mates because their mother, they're still in the trap of the influence of the mother. They want, it's hard to have sex with your mother. So when you create the mother from your wife, you can see how it becomes very complicated. Either you're going to be my wife or my mother, but we're asking the women in our life to be both. We're asking the mates in our life to be both, and that's too much to bear, and it's more than what you can handle yourself. So again, there's a healing that has to come through that type of trap as well. The trap of the over compulsive running to rescue her son and not letting him grow up and be initiated. And many women are trapped with men who have not yet been initiated. So the initiation of a man is the place where he leaves the influence of his parents and began to go on his own path of self-discovery and self-healing. Okay. So we have inner parents as well. There are inner parents that we have within our inner world, and that becomes a whole trap within itself. Okay. So let me just ask, Moot, are you still there? Can you hear me? Okay.
I think she got dropped.
Okay. So I'm just going to go on. Y'all can work on getting her back in or whatever. Um, so again, I think I saw some questions. If you can still hear me, I'm going to answer some of the questions that have come so far. So what do you have for me, if you can hear me?
I believe we had a question from Dean Russell, so I'm gonna
Okay.
let him speak.
Okay. I don't think I can hear Dean at the moment. Did he write this
Hey,
question
can,
out?
can, can you guys hear me now?
Hey, Dean. Yeah, I can hear you now. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, family?
I'm doing
Yeah,
well.
yeah. The ancestral contract.
Mm-hmm.
I came in a little bit late on that. I just wanted to hear you talk more about that, if you would.
Mm-hmm. Sure, absolutely. So the ancestral contract is simply um, the agreements that we made even before incarnation. And with those agreements, we agree to certain experiences for the sake of healing consciousness or healing uh, consciousness on a collective level, not just an individual level. So for everyone who is born, there is a degree of pain and challenge that comes with that. And those contracts, it is my belief, based off of my work and my studies, and there's even a book called Your Soul's Contract, if anybody wants to look that up. I think Robert Schwartz is the name of the author of that book. We make agreements with our soul family even before we incarnate into time. And we agree to go through certain hardships and pain and trauma for the sake of healing the generation that is coming behind. Okay. And when we do our work to heal from our own trauma, we fulfill certain ancestral contracts that we agree to experience. And once we heal those, we can allow our children to have authentic experience or authentic healing within their experience that doesn't include our own baggage from the work that we neglected to do. Does this make sense to you?
Yes, makes lots of sense.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. So I hope that answered your question, Brother Dean. And thank you for it. Hey, Moot, welcome back, honey.
Yeah, you saw I got kicked out. I'm trying to see is it gonna come. We have rain here in
Okay,
Illinois.
okay, okay.
Thunder and lightning going on outside, and it just said, "Hey, you, bye."
Well, I just kept running my mouth. It's all good.
I
So,
was hoping that you could see that, so I pulled my phone up, and we'll see
mhm,
if it comes back live. So thank you. I saw that question from Dean too. So thank you.
mhm. And I was beginning to go into um, how our physical parents become our internal parents.
Yes.
And those internal parents stay with us way deep into adulthood. I've done work with men who were in their 70s, still carrying that inner critic from his parents, still in the trap of his parents' expectations of what is right and wrong for him to do. So it's never too late to heal oneself from this trap. Again, you're stuck in the trap until something or someone releases you. Sometimes the something is an experience, another traumatic event that forces you into healing, that forces you out the cage. Okay, it's interesting when I think about living on that farm. If we did trap an animal, the first thing my grandfather always did was to cover it with some type of blanket. Because if you can bring the senses, if the animal can bring its senses back to its own space without all of the external stimuli, it begins to calm itself. Well, that's what happens when we meditate. What do? We close our eyes. This is the blanket that we put over our space. This is when, we're brought back to the true essence, who we are, and the animal actually comes down until we can get it to the place it needs to be or become somebody's breakfast, whatever it was. Like I said, I lived on the farm. That's how it rolled. Go ahead.
That's very powerful, because I was even thinking about some of the ways, and I realize now how intuitive, tapping in at a young age, my, being initiated in a spiritual setting, right? I realized that I learned how to meditate from, PBS, Lilia's Yoga and
Yes.
watching television. But that did become my soothing way of dealing with it,
There
to
we go.
meditate and do
Yes.
yoga for, even till now, that's what soothes me. Yeah.
I love that. See, that's the thing. As adults, and again, I want to really address the men who are listening. How often do you try to soothe the pain that you can't articulate? There are men who do it through sex. There are men who do it through drug abuse, through food, through some type of rebellion. This is a way to soothe oneself. Why? Because we are still waiting on our mothers and sometimes our father to come save us. Again, to show you how powerful this is and how powerful a man can be in the trap of waiting on mother, especially. I'm going to really direct my attention towards mother, because that's usually where the energy gravitates, towards a man. Go back to the tragedy of George Floyd. In his last minutes, what did he do? Who did he call for? Wasn't Jesus?
No, it was his mother. Yeah.
Wasn't Buddha?
No.
Wasn't Krishna?
Mm-mm.
It was his mother. Because as men, it is a hamster wheel on the parental trap. And that doesn't mean it was a bad thing that he called out for his mom. This is the natural expectation of a man that is in the midst of healing. Okay? So with that, man, there's so much I could say to that. Again, I have my notes. I'm trying to stay on topic. You know, it's just so many thoughts are coming to me right now.
No,
But
that's really, that's very powerful. And what I thought, and I believe that's when we started. No, actually, we started formulating this show before then, but we were inside of a conversation
mm-hmm.
that that there has to be a place where men can feel safe
Yes,
to do this work, because
yes,
we know that it needs to be done, but at the same time they've been expected to do it without any assistance at all, or even acknowledgement that they're in pain,
mm,
or that there's something inside of them that doesn't feel quite right. And then you
yes,
have the whole world that seems like targeting them,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
a lack of words, right? So this
It's
is
true.
what it looks like. Yeah, this is what it looks like. So even when you talk about the mother, and I don't care how good of a mother you have been or think you were or are,
Mm-hmm.
it's still work for your child to do, and you
Mm-hmm.
must let them do that.
Yes,
You
yes.
must. Yeah.
And you know, I'm praying that every woman who is listening, maybe you're trying to understand the man in your life. You got to give him permission for his initiation, which means that you can't fix what you didn't break. He has to go within himself and choose the path of initiation. And that may mean that he may need to separate from you for a spell. And because again, you represent mother to him, not just wife. And I don't think we understand how thin the lines can be.
Yeah.
Okay. But when it comes to a man, again, there are inner parents that he carries with him. For me, I was wounded by mother and father. I was wounded by a stepfather who, when there was a time at 9 years old, I was awakened with a kiss and a hug, and reminded how beautiful I am. Let's get in this field and let's do some fun things today. Let's hurry up and get this done so we can do that and the other. And that was, every day was exciting. I was nurtured every day until I went from that to getting my head bashed against a bed rail. Okay. And that is two different experiences, but nevertheless, it's one that I chose. And I chose that for my own elevation. There are so many men here listening probably who battle with depression. They don't know they are in a dark night of the soul. They don't know that something is trying to emerge within them. And the story behind their own healing is you're weak because you're crying. You're weak because you are emotional. You know, and in astrology, if you are Scorpio, Cancer, or Pisces male, you are going to be extremely emotional and extremely intuitive to the pain that you're trying to suppress. So the crying is never a sign of weakness. It is an example of you having the power to be initiated into the man that you've always envisioned yourself to be. But it's a path to that. It doesn't happen overnight. Again, for me, there was a time I would never do a live like this because I was too afraid of the criticism that came from other people, which were symbolic to my own inner parents that are telling me, you're not smart enough. You'll never be good at that. You need to do it this way. You need to go get a job. You know, if you ain't got a job, you ain't nothing. Forget this stuff trying to create a business, healing people. Nobody's going to listen to you. That's still here today. That's
Yeah.
why I had to, you know, even before our setting, I'm having to go through an hour worth of ritual so that I can be in a place of power and not allow my own parental traps to poison anything that I would say. I don't want to speak from a wounded place of a victim. I want to speak from a place of power. Okay. So again, there are many men, it could come off through codependency. It could come off through being overly aggressive, depression, the need to always have to prove yourself, the need to always be right, not having any boundaries. All of these things come into play when the parental trap is active.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking of the work, you're familiar with Terrence Real and his work, I Don't Want to Talk About It. And I have been using that particular,
Right.
yes, I love his work. I love
Right.
his work. I have been using that with my work with clients, men
Mm-hmm.
and couples for years because he does a wonderful breakdown of
Mm-hmm.
what it's like to grow up in a patriarchal society telling you, don't feel this, don't
Mm-hmm.
cry,
Mm-hmm.
go sit down, suck that up, you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, if you do feel pain when you get married in a relationship with your own children, you have no idea what you're feeling. You have no words for that.
Right.
You have not been taught how to go into, oh, I'm sad, I'm grieving,
Mm.
lonely, I feel abandoned. You don't have those words. You have anger and rage that is
Right.
acceptable. That's it.
Yes. Beautiful.
So I want to,
Very.
yeah, that Terrence Real is one of the major components in helping men and couples to bridge that and jump out of that, you know, that patriarchal standing that your feelings don't matter. Your feelings are everything.
And if we ever, if men ever give themselves permission to feel, again, you're going to see a rise of kings like you never have before. But again, we're still in the trap waiting for the same parents that wounded us to what? Come save us. It's not going to work that way. Your initiation, men, let me tell you, your initiation is not just important for your families, it is necessary for you to become the power and the visionary that you're called to be. No matter how powerful you are and how much you know, I don't care how many degrees you have. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care what's your title. I don't care if you're bishop, pastor, guru, whatever, doctor. If you haven't been through an initiation, you will sabotage every gift, every good thing that comes your way. You will convince yourself you don't deserve it. Why? Because you're still waiting to be rescued. And nobody is coming but the one who is listening to my voice. And to all the men who have suffered extreme tragedies, there are men who have been molested and they can't dare talk about it. Why? Because we have created this patriarchal system to wound men who talk about these issues and define and label them as one who is weak. And that's the last thing that we want to embody. So if there are any questions, I want to make sure I stay relevant to the listeners here. If are there any questions that are on the table that I need to address?
Can you see your panel?
Yes, I was just going to say, check the panel. Sam Martin has a question.
Okay, so somebody may have to read that because I don't see it. I don't have it on my end.
Yeah, we're working off our cell phones. Can you read it
Hi,
for us, Vicky?
can you hear me?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, because I didn't type it out. It's kind of
Oh,
somewhat
okay.
long. Yeah, it's kind of one part overlaps the other. The first part, just listening to what you said initially, Tim, and just looking at our history, a lot of these issues seem to be sort of modern, contemporary throughout history in a way, for a while, generations, but still modern day problems of the context of the societies we live in. So I guess my question is, what do you say about us more, instead of trying to solve the problems within this modern context, whether it's the defund the police or any kind of strategy we come up with,
Mm-hmm.
to really actively working to restore our ancient ways, living in true tribes in the sense of, 75 to 150 people, where these issues, when you look at a lot of cultures, they don't even have words for the stuff we talk about, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's, police or cancer or, all these kind of things. We just don't, it's not even in our vocabulary because it doesn't exist in our realities.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a solution. Instead of us trying to fix it within the context of disease, is really just like focusing more of our energy towards restoring our ancient cultural ways. And then the overlap to that is particularly, so if we're talking about men, is the idea of, like, it's interesting, men have rites of passage, whereas
Yes.
women don't, because, I mean, biologically, you have your rites of passage through menstruation, and you have your community with your mother, aunts, grandmothers, that the women that come together around that happening as you're sort of brought into womanhood,
Mm-hmm.
so that's also, I think, why women mature, but we don't have that because we've lost the rites of passage. So I guess even us developing something like that now is hard, because again, the context we live in, it's like, where do we start to make a good rites of passage that's really effective? And also,
Mm-hmm.
we can't just do it for the youth to become men. We got to do it for us as adults, because we're just big kids, and we haven't done what we needed to do to lose that and become mature adult men, to then not have the issues you're talking about of the whole mother issue still in our relationships.
Mm-hmm. So again, thank you so much for that brilliant reflection and question. So, and I'm going to do my best to address the statement slash question that you brought, and I hope that what I have is relevant. Again, so my work in the community. Again, I'm a spiritual mentor, and I'm also a student and a disciple within the discipline of the mystic works. My job is to see the divine within every experience, because we all know that divine spirit, God is whatever you subscribe to as the supreme authority that governs our life. There's a language that's being spoken through our experiences. It's not going to be an audible language. It's not going to call you on the phone. And with these experiences, we must be in a place of self initiation in our own our path and our emotional states, to where we begin to heal and do the work of forgiveness and letting go of those that harmed us or wounded us, talking about our parents, and begin to embody a place of power, not just within ourselves, but also collectively with each other. Again, you mentioned to some possible solutions, such as defunding the police or doing other external strategies to fix things. As for me, I'm still reflecting on how to wisely address those issues in that way. But to start with, especially for men, okay, if every man does the work, every man, if every man does the work to be initiated from the soul, from the place of power within them, the magic, I believe, would spill over collectively, because we will develop such a pride and love for ourselves that we can also extend that pride and love to each other. And once we as men begin to take pride and love each other, our self-esteem goes up within, and also you will notice that the notorious cliche black on black crime would also decrease. Black on black crime is a product of white supremacy. It is a product of being wounded from another race of people. And we're still being initiated into into that form of healing as well. And it involves a degree of forgiveness, because we're talking about parents today, the parent trap, but the parent trap extends to those who were once in authority over us.
Yes.
So, many of us, our ancestors going into the 50s and 60s, saw white people as mother and father as well. And they would address us as boy. Hey, girl, come here. Hey, boy, come here. Why? Because they assume a parental position in our life, and they also contributed to the parental wounding that led us in this trap. So there are traps that you experience from maybe your mother, from being verbally abusive or just emotionally dismissive. Father could have been very critical and abusive, but there are also people that you gave your rights to and submitted to somebody else's authority, and they're still the boss of you as well. Okay, so the parental trap goes not just from your bloodline, but also into anybody that you give power to be in authority over you. So again, to find answers to those complex issues, Samuel, again, I haven't even gotten to that point right now. I have been so busy in the last 4 or 5 weeks just dealing with men, allowing them to sit in their rage and aggression and even depression of feeling they're hopeless. We got to deal with that first.
Yes.
Because the hopelessness of men leads us to put on a mask and be something that we're not. It was never meant for you to rule over your women or abuse them. But because you were robbed of a place of power as a child, this is your way of reestablishing that power by taking it out on people you think you have control over. We got to heal that within the Black family, especially. Okay. So again, I don't know if I addressed the question, but I did my very best.
You did a wonderful job addressing that. And I can't even emphasize enough the point that you made, that if every man did their work. So if I get clear that that society, as chaotic as it is right now, is a mirror of the chaos inside of us.
That's it. Yes.
Inside of each of us, and especially inside of Black men and family and children. I saw a video where people were jumping on somebody and the child joined in and was beating on this woman. And I'm thinking, are you serious?
Yeah, it happens. Yes.
It happens a lot. And you wonder what's going to happen to this when they grow up. But I remember going through, and I just want to tell this brief story because there was a time when I could not figure out what the issue was with me and men, and I thought I had did my daddy work. And I remember one time just saying, I'm going to do a 30-day ritual to men. And I never knew my father, so I couldn't do a ritual to a person's name, but I did it to the energy of the power that brought me into the world, thanking the seed, you know, and acknowledging it. Even my husband that was killed when I was 25 years old, you know, I did a ritual to him, and then my next husband and my next husband. And I literally, after I finished that 30 days, I went to those men and I told them, I want to apologize to you for blaming you and causing you an abuser. You showed up in my video. And they said, no, And I had my children there. My son said, no, let mommy talk. Let her talk. This is for her. This is not for you. And I said, you know, I'm not saying that you weren't responsible for something, but I'm accepting full responsibility.
Yes.
What I brought into my life, because it is there that where my power lies. If it's showing up in my space, that's my work to do. And I just want to thank you for being, and that, to this day, you know, those are people that I can call on, talk to, just like I talk to you on a regular basis.
Yes.
But I had to do that work. And then after that, 80% of my clients became men. And it was inside of being able to hear their pain and to stand in their rage.
Beautiful.
Right?
Yes, yes.
Be present to their anger and not be intimidated by it. So I felt like all of those things that I went through was initiating me to this work that we're doing inside of Healing Waters.
Yes, yes.
And that's what that looks like. To individually do the work, all of us. Yeah, so thank you for that. That's powerful.
You know, again, the key word I want to keep in front of us is, again, initiation. And
Mhm.
there's no schedule for
Right.
initiation. When a boy is being initiated into the culture back in our native land, the child is deep asleep, right? And 1 o'clock in the morning, his space is disrupted, and a spear is put in his hand, and he goes on his first hunt. Again, the child is disoriented. The pattern of his life is being disrupted, and his moment of being called into purpose is at hand. And this happens to many of our men. It started, okay, back in with our parents. And remember, if your parents wounded you, it is because they were in some way wounded as well. And the work that they neglected to do or wasn't able or privy to do, it is now our responsibility to not only do our work, but to heal the bloodlines that go way beyond our parents into the inception of inferiority or the inception of not feeling worthy or enough. It is, if you are awake today, an awakening comes with a responsibility.
Yes.
It's not just for you to prove how smart you are and how intelligent you are, or how much you can build, how much money you can make. All those things are lovely, but to be awake in today's time carries a responsibility, and that responsibility is to heal those who are coming under you. I have a program that I mentor men of single mothers, and in that conversation that I'm having with them, they didn't know it was okay to cry in front of another man and not be ridiculed for that. They didn't know that that was normal. I mentor a child. The child couldn't even speak. It couldn't even articulate the pain that they've been through. Multiple. I'm talking about a man. Multiple rapes, sleeping on a dirt floor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm coaching this kid. And you know, I was a high school basketball coach. I'm coaching this kid, and I had to pull that kid away because my intuition was just going off and said, this is your moment of initiation. So not only are we initiated in the pain of the experience, we're initiated as we teach our sons how to become men. It helps you graduate to another level. And this young man could not even begin to talk. He wanted to speak, but there was a trap within his vocal cords, within his very soul, that would not allow him to articulate his pain. I said, just go ahead and cry. And he was like, you know, his chest bucks up. I said, no. I said, we're going to sit here until you cry. And then I saw the lips quivering. I said, oh, hell, here we go, you know. And once the lips start quivering, I literally had to hold him. He could no longer stand up. That was his point of initiation. Okay, that was his point of healing. After that, never got in any more trouble in school. After that, never had another incident with the law. After that, began to create programs to help children with less privilege and less resources to make sure they have whatever they needed, so they would never have to sleep on a dirt floor. He's no longer a kid. He's 22 now, but still, this is the initiation. And men, look, if you are a leader, okay, leadership is an act of love.
Yes.
Leadership is not an act to showcase your prowess and your alpha persona. Leadership is an act of love, and that love must be unconditional, which means that until you become initiated to loving yourself, forgiving your parents, whether they are here or not, understand that they did their job. They did their job to wound you so that you would recognize your path and vision in your own life. Again, I was one of my clients, their mother literally resented their presence. And I was able to work with the mother and the son. And when I began to allow the mother to relax, deal with her, I said, in what way do you feel attacked by your son? And I don't feel attacked. I'm his mother. No, you feel attacked. It was the responsibility of raising a son alone that she felt attacked.
Yeah.
Every time the son cried and she couldn't calm him down, she felt attacked.
Mm.
Attacked by what? Her own inner parents that told her, you'll never be a good mother.
Mm-hmm.
So everything, so the mother had to overcompensate and always run to this child's rescue. And you would think in a perfect world that the child would just love that. But the son even resented its mother more because she was getting in the way of his own initiation.
Mm.
And I do understand that there are some certain ladies out there, you don't have a choice but to raise your sons. There are no men available. And I get that, which is why I wanted to create a resource for men that if there are no men in your community, I can be the voice of clarity to allow them to sit in the space of emotional or some type of traumatic healing, and they still feel empowered once they release these emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if there are anyone out there, you don't have a community, hit me up, because we definitely want to hold space for you, because a man can't even grow spiritually. You can't even begin to talk about a spiritual conversation when he is trapped by the limitations of his parents.
Yes.
The best that child will ever do is go to church. He will never ascend that because he is still in the trap of trying to relive the limitation of his parents. And as parents, we got to give our children permission to not only embrace their own healing, but also embrace their path to go wherever it leads. If it leads you outside the church to go to some type of Buddhist construct, let it be. If it's to follow the ancestors back into our native land, to understand our ancient ways of healing, let it be. We got to give our children permission to create their own space of healing and release them from our own traps. Because with me, Moot, I've been in this work. I told you how long, when I met you, I was in this work. Still, I wounded my daughter.
Yes.
I wounded her by creating this unrealistic expectation of perfection.
Mm-hmm.
I protected her.
Mm-hmm.
I gave her everything that I possibly could, but still, I unconsciously placed upon her this unrealistic view of what perfection is and didn't allow for mistakes to be made.
Mm.
So yeah, pretty deep conversation.
Yeah, and that's really it's so interesting, Timothy, because one thing is one thing to say, oh, our parents are here to wound us, but to be the parent that wounds, it's still a painful place. It's tough,
yeah.
You know, and it still points to our level of compassion as well that we have to have for ourselves.
Yes.
As we grow, because we're still part of, and another part of that too is our sensitivity inside of this work has to be that available, because as soon as we become hard, you're not good for anybody. You
Absolutely.
know, you can't help someone if you're right, if you're hard, if you know it, if you, because really, that's a wall. You know, it doesn't bend.
Right.
You know, that allowing has to be there. So that's part of our growth. That wounding that we do to our children is also inside of our growth and development.
So true. And again, I can't even agree more. My prayer is that we as men awaken to our destiny and our purpose and the responsibility of initiation again. Till this day, still, I'm working through so many parental traps. Keep in mind, the only man that ever told me he loved me was my grandfather. I had a stepfather that I never emotionally connected with. I had a biological father that lived an hour and 48 minutes away that I didn't even see to my late teenage years because he was afraid that I was trying to hit him for child support. So anytime I wanted to connect with him, there was always something in the way. There was always a lie told. Well, he's not in the city, right? He's not around, or he's not available. But I want to speak with him. I don't want anything from him. I just want to speak with him. That didn't happen till later in my adult life. And even the wounding from that, this is a whole nother conversation. Men, the reason you must be initiated to heal is to leave an inheritance to your sons and your daughters behind you. But I had two fathers in my life, and didn't get an inheritance left to me from either one.
Yeah.
The inheritance went to other children who were, I guess, quote unquote, acceptable within the family. But I guess I'm the weirdo of the family. The only male that left me an inheritance is my grandfather, and I'm wearing his ring right now. Okay.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes that's enough. But think about that. A man didn't get left anything, nothing tangible to build on. So guess what? I'm working my ass off now, building institutions for myself as well as my daughter to carry on for her children and her children's children. We must be about the work of healing. But I couldn't be initiated until I forgave my perception of how I was wounded. Okay? I perceived that, something was wrong with me. Therefore, this is why you acted like that. And this is the unconscious mind I carried on with my life, carried on for the rest of to this time. But now I'm understanding that I chose them for the wounding. They were a part of my own creation, my own ancestral contract to break hidden cycles of pain, of violations, and to allow me to be emotionally intelligent. Again, women, find you a man that is self-initiated and emotionally intelligent. If you do that, you won't be projected on to be his mother, and you can play the role of his queen versus nurturing him as a mother from the experiences he didn't get as a child. That's the difference.
That's powerful. I was just telling a friend of mine today, just thanking him for being that type of person. I said, I didn't even have to suggest any of that.
It's beautiful.
You got buco brownie points. You don't even know.
Yep.
But Timothy, I wanted to bring back something that you said earlier about natal charts. Okay. So when you're working with clients inside of the conversation of their relationship with their parents, what are some of the things that can help men who are struggling to heal? What can they learn from that natal chart that could give them some opening and some relief? Is there something that you could share with us inside of that?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So again, when we're talking astrology, we're talking about the sacred observation of time. Okay, astrology is to remind us of our ancestral contracts that we agreed to have before our incarnation again. So when I'm coming to people, I am coming to them from a place of, this is what you agreed to. And now I know you have forgotten about all of these responsibilities in time, as well as you should have, because when a child comes to the womb, there's a veil of what they call a veil of forgetfulness. They forget everything about who they are, and they begin to find their way back by identifying with their environment and cultures, that they're surrounded with. But in astrology, no matter how painful the wounding, there's always an explanation of why. And if we understand why this happened, forgiveness is kind of unconscious. Okay, we just had this conversation, seemed like a few days ago, when we were talking about community. I used the example of, you're sitting at a red light, somebody rear ends you, the immediate response is from the trap of anger to fight back. So you become enraged, you go into that warrior spirit until you go out and observe, analyze what happened. And that's what goes on in an astrology chart. When you analyze what has happened, you see there's an elderly woman who simply passed out. Who passed out in the middle of driving. Now, what happened to the anger? What happened to the resentment and the wanting to bring somebody some pain because they have disrupted your safe space in life? You become the nurturer. You want to help and assist. And this is why forgiveness is so powerful. Forgiveness is never conscious to me. Forgiveness is an undercurrent of what it is when you understand and understand why events happen. And that's what astrology does. Again, so like my grandfather, okay, I had to look at his chart to understand exactly the ways I was initiated and from his teaching. So I am a Cancer rising. Cancers are very nurturing. They're very intuitive, very psychic. Okay, they're very tribal as well. Now, my grandfather was born in a generation that had Pluto in Cancer. So he was about showing me how to transform that intuitive nature, how to transform myself by embracing my emotional states and not projecting them onto others, to take responsibility for that. So with astrology, I can use the planets and signs of their chart, take from the parents, and I can look at yours and I can tell you exactly the legacy that they left you to work through. So yeah, again, the fourth house represents the mother. The fourth house is symbolic of the underworld on an astrology chart. It is the very bottom. Okay, so we understand that mothers initiate through taking someone through the underworld of life, through the unconscious darkness that we resist dealing with. Then the 10th house, which is straight above, the 10th house represents the initiation to overcome criticism from public observation, so that you don't be intimidated just because somebody doesn't like what you do. You don't feel the need to have to you don't need their validation to be great. Well, the Father brings you into that.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, astrology is really cool when you know what you're looking at. Again, if you're looking to find out where your husband is or get your lucky numbers, I'm the wrong person to look for in astrology, I tell you. But if you're looking for answers that can lead you to a place of self-initiation, then I'm here to hold space for that. And I have been doing it for several years now.
Yes, you have. And I do recommend you to quite a few people that come my way, because there's some work that I can do in helping people to deal with their mother issues, but there's other work that helps them to actually do the purpose and seeing their own greatness.
Beautiful.
That goes beyond me a lot of times. And I know that we've given 2 references so far to people. You talked about Robert Schwartz and Your Soul Plan. We can't stress enough how useful that is in seeing that we initiated ourselves in getting here.
That is the beautiful thing about it. Think about having a conversation. See, the conversation you're having then looks totally different than the conversation in an incarnation. So think about the reason I forgave my fathers, because it took a hell of a soul to agree to wound me like this, knowing that in spirit form, you love me with no conditions, but you agreed to wound me in this way so that I can hold space and be available to serve other men in this capacity makes it all worth it. And when I understood that, forgiveness happens on its own. It's just so many things we could speak to with that. But for men, the power is in letting go of the story from the wound. There is something deeper to be acknowledged within us. Again, so if there are any men who feel like you're in a trap and you can't get out of it, you may be asking, well, how do you know if you're in a trap? How often do you just feel emotionally confused? How often do you just feel the need to be violent without even knowing why? How many of you are depressed and you can't put words as to why you are depressed? You just think, men think if we just do something, then that'll alleviate the depression, but it never goes away. And what happens, we project those onto our families. And men, the reason we got to be more responsible with our work is because our families need to be healed. It is not your girlfriend, wife's place to initiate you. Stop blaming her for what you refuse to do. Okay? I hope I'm not being too direct, but this is just this is the way I hold space, you know? So let that go and allow yourself to be accountable to somebody. Again, I've been in the work 30 plus years and I have a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I have a therapist? Well, does that mean that you're going to discredit everything that I've said because I have a therapist? No. I have a therapist because I understand me as an individual. I have blind spots from my own ego in identifying areas that I need to heal within myself.
Yes.
Okay. So that I can walk in confidence and so that I'm not codependent on my lovely wife, Jaquay, to make me feel like a man, because I can acknowledge that in my own space now. I can take responsibility for that in my own space. So again, to be a man is a very spiritual work within itself. You know, we don't even want to talk about the path of women in this culture. And that's a whole nother hour of conversation. But for men, and if you are a Black man, you are being initiated like never before.
Mm-hmm.
When you see a man being murdered with a knee on his neck, you don't think that you're being triggered into your ancestral contracts just by watching it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you the truth, Moo. I have never watched the whole video in its entirety because I'm not ready to engage in that level of accountability for that type of initiation just yet.
Yes.
So I haven't watched it. I don't necessarily need to watch it to know what I'm dealing with.
Yes.
Okay. So I mean that's just me. But again, let me see. There was something I wanted to say, but lo and behold, I have forgotten. So if you want to go with something, or if you want to do a Q&A.
No, we should, Vicky, just check and see if there's any questions. And, you know, I want to really say to people, if you're needing assistance, you know, right now, you know, again, hit Timothy up. You can hit us up on Master Force Leadership Academy. We're all on Facebook. You can find us there. You can also call and leave a message at 773-969-6211. Again, that's 773-969-6211. And that's our voice mail at Masterforce. And you know, we'll get back to you, because our goal and our intention here is to provide healing space. We have coaches all over the world. You know, Timothy is the example of our executive life coaches, because he carries so much responsibility in other things that he do. So, you know, and then he's accountable as well for his own spiritual development. So this is what we look for in leadership, not somebody who's just rah-rah, cocky-eyed, you know, look at my face. You know, because people do that a lot, though. You know, they get caught up in the ego side and forget to take care of the people. And that's what we want to do. We want to take care of the people in our community for sure. So, you know, if you need assistance, please reach out. And Timothy, what were you? Did it come back to you? What you were getting ready to say?
Well, yeah, actually, it was. You know, and to speak on what you just mentioned, again, men who are in, you know, spiritual teachers within the work that we do, I can always spot parental wounding by the degree they go to impress others. Either by their vocabulary or their delivery, or just, you know, trying to post all their references of what they know. And I'm like, if you would just sit in the space of healing, the words would speak through you without you having to articulate them even with words. Sometimes when I'm sitting with a young man, we don't even talk. I say, let's just sit here. Yeah. And we're just sitting there, and all of a sudden I see a tear well up. Yeah. Where is that tear coming from? I haven't said anything. Because men, we have forgotten that our space is also a vessel of healing versus our words and trying to boss somebody around. This, you need to do it A, B, and C. When was the last time you sat with somebody who was hurting? Until you have sat by somebody who was on their deathbed,
Yeah.
What can you speak to them?
Yeah.
Okay. What metaphysical patterns and metaphysical reflections can you speak on to assist them on a deathbed?
Right.
It is the space you hold in silence that
Mm-hmm.
I'm referring to. And, you know, I wanted to throw this out there before I forgot, because there are a lot of men who do this as well. They fight so hard not to be like their parents that they never, they solidify the trap that is holding them back.
Yes.
The drive of, I'll never be like my mother. You
Yeah.
become what you refuse to forgive.
Yeah.
So the very drive that you are, you know, enforcing, trying not to be like, is further growing you into the space of what you are resisting.
Mm-hmm.
So forgiveness is so imperative. Okay, not only just for you as an individual, but for you and your mates. I was teaching yesterday. Um, I was telling the people, you cannot connect with anyone in spaces they haven't learned to connect with themselves. You can't connect with a man who has not connected with himself. You are setting yourself up to be projected on if you don't allow him to do his work.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be his choice. Okay, you cannot manipulate him into initiation. Well,
Nope.
either you go get counseling. I'm out here. I'm not even. And he's like, oh hell, I can't lose you like I did my mother. Let me go get this counseling.
And it's still not gonna work.
So I mean, it has to be a decision. And now it's raining here. How cool is that? So
Oh, wow.
it has to be a decision for the man to say, I choose myself. I choose to be a better version of myself. Therefore, I will allow my initiation to go forth. Let it be your choice to give me a call. Please don't let it be. Don't let your mate manipulate you into calling me. It won't work. You're going to pass that judgment on to me. And if there is anybody else in this work, maybe you're a coach, maybe you're a therapist. You got to be ready. When you bring people to this space of accountability, you're going to be projected on. You're going to be the father that they hate. You're going to be the mother that they hate. And if you haven't been initiated in your own rites of passage, then you're going to feel a certain way when you're projected on. You have to be able to hold space. There are so many men that I've worked with. It hasn't always been a success story. Certain men didn't want to be accountable for their own initiation and projected their father unforgiveness onto me. But guess what? That's not the space I'm here to hold. I'm going to let you have all of that.
Yeah.
That is yours if you choose to have it. But if you're willing to let go of that and be accountable for a space of healing, then I'm here for all of that. I'm here to be a resource for the authentic you, for you to take off the mask. And yes, the authentic you is vulnerable. It is wounded. I know that going in. Okay. So if there are men who are coaches and therapists, you may have to go through a different level of initiation so that you can hold space to be accountable for the work you're doing and for the pain they're bringing to you.
Yeah, that's really great. That's been part of my initiation work probably for the 30 years that I've been doing this too, is really working with the coaches and the leaders, and because I hold such a space of integrity and accountability, people walk away from me because they don't want to deal with the correction. But that's who I am. That's the only reason that I would correct you is because I love you. I don't correct people that I care nothing about, or I don't know them, or I don't see their greatness. I can see, and I, people don't realize there's some of us that can see the light in people, even if they can't see it in themselves. So when we say it to you and we bring it to you, it's not to shut the light out, it's to make it brighter.
Yes.
Make it brighter, and that with that reflection for you as well, and then that reflection for me too. So that, I've learned to, okay, I got to let you go. I got it. Don't want to, but man, got it.
I'm up here writing other notes just in case this goes on, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So,
No,
but
no, but
this
that's
has been a
good. So
pleasure.
I
Thank you.
love that. Yeah, I love that you said that, because that I'm people's mother figure or authority figure or whoever, you know.
Hmm.
But that's not my place.
Right.
That's not my
So true.
place. Yeah, so that's really great. So we're winding up. Did you have any, final things? Did you have anything else on your list that you needed to say? Checking my list.
Yeah, let me make sure. So as we get ready to conclude this, again, thank you, Master Force, for holding this space. I know it's going to be awesome all week. I try to stay in my lane and not talk about emotional issues and talk about spirituality and relationships. All of those, I think I'll be on at the end of the week though,
Yes,
to kind of shed,
Mm.
to shed light on that. So we'll keep it to them. But I want everybody, every man in here to know 3 things here. Okay. The number one thing is it is your parents' job to wound you. Remember this, it's their job, okay? The next thing, it is our responsibility to complete our initiation that we signed up for.
Mm.
And the last thing is we must be accountable for the work that is undone and not pass it down to our children. So those are the 3 things. Again, I'm going to repeat those. Moot, are you still with me? Or are you caught up?
I'm still here. I'm
Yeah,
trying to,
very good. So 3 things again. Our parents are here to wound us. It is their job. It is our responsibility to complete this initiation by doing our work of healing. And we must do our work of healing to a place of completion that we don't pass it down to our children. There will be your own individual wounding you will pass down anyway. Don't bypass your work and leave it for them to do. And if every generation does this, eventually we get to a space of accountability. And you'll see all of the discord that you're witnessing in our world begin to change. Why? Because we're changing. And if we change within, all of the symbolism that are being spoken to us on a daily basis, those things can be healed and resolved. But it doesn't happen from the outside in, it happens from the inside out.
Yeah, that's very powerful. I'm present to all of the death that we keep being triggered by.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being 10 years old when my cousin Jimmy was actually shot in the head and he died. And we were at his funeral, and I'm, the little kid sitting on the front row, and I'm watching these men walk through and kiss him on the lips.
Wow.
During the initiation, the kiss of death. And I'm like, this is weird to
it's
me.
Heavy.
Right?
It's heavy.
And nobody's talking about it, right? But the thing about Jimmy is that Jimmy was my protector in the family. So much to the point, if there were no adults in the house and he got ready to leave, he would take me with him because he was concerned about how I was treated when no adults were around. So, I'm here looking at my protector in this casket with all these men walking through and kissing him. And that became part of my initiation.
Yes.
And of course, you don't see that then, right? But
yes.
when I look back on it, I can really see the need to heal the violence in my family and in the world. So it was because that was gang related, right? So it's a whole world relationship inside of that. But it took me to get used to death, to do research on it, to realize there's no finality to it.
There we go.
To stand inside of how our ancestors see death, to know that they're with us all the time. And that we can use that energy and be uplifted by that energy so that we can fulfill on the ancestral contracts that you spoke about.
But you
Yes.
can't do it through grief. You can't get downloads when you're grieving and when
Mm-hmm.
you're angry. You have to be receptive and open so that your energy is moving through you.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to speak to some of that?
Again, this, I'm so glad that you brought that experience up, because it just goes into the blueprint of what initiation looks like. Initiation, the point of initiation is never understood. Okay, it's never understood. It is always something so complex. It's such a, you're at an age you just can't comprehend what is happening. But that's because it's not for your conscious mind to interpret. There is a soul work that is going on. And in that soul work, those ancestral contracts begin to become activated, just like yours. There is no way, if I was born into the so-called perfect house of parents who left me Trump-like wealth, who that I was able to come up with any solution that I wanted to in the church, I would have never been on this path to investigate. There has to be other, deeper means of experience in life. There's something I'm connected to, and I can't rest and be content until I get answers to that. My ancestral contract became activated. Again, you read all the history of what we have been through, all of it. You are the reason they went through that.
Yeah.
You are the legacy of their suffering. And what I mean by that is, for every abuse that our ancestors experienced, it was to give you this powerful ancestral power, energy of support, shall I say, to sustain you, to wake the hell up and be about your work. If you are a male past the age of 40 and you still don't know what it is you're supposed to do, you need to give somebody a call.
Yes.
Okay. If you have made it past your first Saturn return, which is 28 to 30, you still don't know what you're supposed to do. It's time to call somebody, because you're not here by mistake. You're here for a perfect design to fulfill something. Well, what is it? Talk to your ancestors and find out, just like I did. Okay. Never in a million years did I think I would be on this mystic path. Okay. This is not what I was groomed for. But I received so much pain in a place that was supposed to be comfortable. I had no choice but to force myself into this initiation. Then, and early in my marriage, I thought it was my wife's job. Okay, I thought it was her responsibility, and I relied, and she fulfilled that role until she couldn't. It just came to a place I had to embrace my own ideas and perception of what was weak. And I thought that being emotional was weak. But it was, I found the answers in my own tears, in my own crying, and just bawling out, not just to myself. It's easy to kind of cry to yourself, but with another man in my presence, and I'm able to cry before him, and he can hold space for me. This is the beauty of what it is to be initiated as a man. No matter what spiritual preference you subscribe to, this is the common core of what it means to fulfill our ancestral contracts. Okay.
That's beautiful. I was with someone the other day in my family, and they called me weak because I cry. And it reminded me of being that little girl who was teased for crying and being a crybaby. And I said, wow, thank you. I'm still here. I can cry, I can be sensitive, I can feel, because there are a lot of people that have gone through less than what I've gone through and refuse to feel.
Ain't that something?
They refuse to experience it. They don't want to deal with none of it. I said, and I'm willing to. I'm still willing to. And I love my tears, right? And again, it gives us the space to hold space for others. If you can't hold your own tears, you can't hold space for anyone else.
So true, so true. And I want to take this time also to thank all the women in my life. With you, and especially my wife and daughter who had to put up with me. My initiation wasn't pretty, Mood. It was quite disruptive.
I remember.
Okay. It was, it
I
wasn't.
think that's how we met in one part of your initiation.
And the community of light, if you're listening to the women who, because there was a time in light, all of the men left. All of the men in my community left, but the women remained and held the vision down. And I want to take the time to thank y'all for holding space for me as I began to learn and relearn what manhood was, to be comfortable in my emotional space of power as a man, and to take responsibility for my initiation. Y'all gave me the ability to do that. So every woman in my life that is watching this video or that has passed on to eternity, thank y'all for that. I am greatly honored and I greatly appreciate that.
That was so true, Timothy. And, I want to add inside of that statement that is who women are for our community, for our men, for our children. And I've had women say, why do I have to do it?
Yeah.
You don't have to. You really don't have to.
Facts.
There's no obligation to do it. But when you're standing in your own power, it's a natural grace to do it.
Beautiful. Yes.
It's very natural to do it. I saw a statement today where a young man said, he said, young men are refusing to get married because women are not women anymore.
Okay.
And I had to put a tear on that because I know exactly what he's talking about. And that's another space that we'll have to create.
Yeah. I'm up here thinking, and I'm like, oh, okay, I see something. Okay, let me be quiet. Yeah.
It's right there, and I get it. I mean, it's like there's a lot of missing for women too, and in this space, we're holding the space for men. We're creating healing waters this week. Beautiful. And Timothy, I just love that you have given me so much foundation for the work that we do at Master Force. Just as much as you say, who I am for you, that's who you are for me. And it matters that we have a community that we share. You have yours over there, I have mine over here, and we combine, and then we create another community. That's what expansion looks like, because we're inside of giving our gifts as we heal and grow.
True. So true.
Trying to be perfect and look a certain way. It's like, this is what it looks like. It's very organic. It's very natural.
Yes.
So
totally
I
agree.
just thank you, and I thank your lovely wife and all of the community. With your community, I think one person from your community a week writes to me and say, when are you coming? I will be there this summer.
I know that's right. Exactly. Let them put the pressure on you.
Oh yeah, somebody tell Moot to come on.
Facts.
Yeah, but I just thank you for always being so willing. You've always been a great team player, and that's just made my life much easier too. So thank you.
Oh, it's my divine pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then for the audience, I thank you for being here with us on our opening night, day one. And we will be back tomorrow night, where we will talk to Martin and Marshawn about empowering emotions. If you have any further questions, you can continue to, we have a Facebook page called Ignite Your Soul Connection. So you can put your questions there as well, and someone will address them. We'll get back to you. And otherwise, we will see you tomorrow. And can you hold on, Timothy? I think Vicki wants to talk to us. Vicki, you can take us out. Good night, everybody.
I just want to thank everybody for coming out. This is my first event. I'm so excited. I feel so much better. And I also learned a couple of things too outside of my Master Force training. So I feel very, very empowered right now. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And I hope to see you tomorrow, okay?
All right.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.
Blessings.